Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming today. It's a bit chilly out there, to put it mildly, but at least it's nice and warm in here, getting ready for Christmas. So, to start the meeting off, I'd like to go through we have apologies here from Councillors Ash, Hopkinson, Jacobs. Sorry, we're having more problems. Okay, I'll start again. Apologies from Councillors Ash, Hopkinson, Jacobs, Tucker, and Richard Eddy, and James Mason, who's the independent person. And I believe, Simon, you will talk about the emergency evacuation procedures.
Yep. Turn yours off, Brenda. Yes, good afternoon, members. We're not expecting any fire alarm today, any testing of the fire alarm. So if it does operate, it will be for legitimate reasons. If you can make your way out of one of the exits in the room, providing those exits are available to you, you can either exit the building in three ways, either down through the central staircase in the way that you came in, or at each end of the corridor, and that will lead you either to the rear yard or to the front yard, where we'll congregate and take a roll call. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I've not received any declarations of interest of anything on the agenda, unless anybody wants to change their mind. Nope, good. We haven't received any public access requests either. So, this Fire Authority meeting is taking place as a face-to-face meeting. We are also recording the meeting for the public to view on the Fire Authority YouTube channel. So I'm going to ask. I do apologise. My microphone keeps going off. So if you suddenly can't hear me, please wave or something. Right. I think I was about to say that I was going to ask you to introduce yourselves. So starting with me, and this is members first of all. My name's Brenda Massey. I'm a councillor in Bristol, and I'm chair of the Fire Authority. I'll go around in that direction.
Hi, Shelley Bromley, Councillor for Western and Bath and North East Somerset Council.
Neil Butters, Councillor for Bath, Avon South Ward, Bath North East Somerset.
Andrew Varney, Councillor for Bristol City Council, Brislington West.
Councillor Yukteswar Kumar from Bathwick, Bath at North East Somerset. You can call me YK if you like, because of my first name being long.
Adam Monk from South Gloss Council, representing the Filton Ward.
Don Davis from North Somerset Council, Peel Ward, and also Vice Chair of the Authority.
Yasin Mahmood, Bristol City Council, Lawson Ward.
Councillor Emma Ali from Vroomvale, Bristol City Council.
David Wilcox, Councillor for Lockleys in the fine city of Bristol.
Tony Brown, Councillor for South Gloucester, Stoke Gifford Ward.
Councillor Ben Nutland, South Gloucestershire Council, Councillor for Yate North.
Steve Smith, Councillor for Westbury-on-Trim and Henleys, Bristol City Council.
Mark Shelford, I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset.
Right, thank you.
Chair, I've just noticed, in fact, Councillor Payne isn't yet here, so it may be that he's joining us later.
We heard from Councillor Payne. He isn't able to make it today, unfortunately. Also, Councillor Paul Goggin is yet to arrive.
Yeah, that's it.
This is going to be interesting, having to work out which microphone's actually working at any one time. So if I suddenly fade away, please sort of shout or wave and I can see you. Right, having done the members, can I now ask the officers to introduce themselves? And let's go around the opposite way. So we'll start with you, please, Simon.
Good afternoon, members. Simon Shilton, your Chief Fire Officer and Chief Executive.
Good afternoon, Angie Feeney. I'm the Director of Corporate Services here at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Good afternoon, members. Steve Imrie, one of the Assistant Chiefs.
Good afternoon, members. Scott Ward, Corporate Assurance and Business Planning Manager at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Afternoon, Simon Richards, Property Services Manager for Avon Fire and Rescue. Afternoon, everybody. Matt Pescott, I'm the Area Manager for Learning and Development.
Hi everybody, Tanya Nathan, Head of Procurement.
Hi, Emma Bowen, Democratic Services.
Good afternoon, members and colleagues. Richard Welch, the other Assistant Chief Fire Officer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Amanda Brown, I'm the Clerk of Avon Fire Authority.
Thank you. And can I just remind everybody to use your microphones when you're speaking and remember to turn them off afterwards. Any voting required will take place by asking members for a show of hands, and it will be in the order of any votes against, any abstentions and any votes for. And I just wanted to remind you that Councillor Paul May has now left the Fire Authority, and we wish him well for the future. This is going to be a pain, I can see. Right, so I'll repeat that in case it didn't go through to the camera. Councillor Paul May has now left the Fire Authority, and we wish him well for the future. And we'd like to welcome Councillor Dr. Kumar, who has replaced Councillor May from Baines, so welcome. Just a few more announcements. The Asian Fire Service Association Awards took place on the 23rd of November.
Just keep going, I'll do the button.
This is going to be so distracting. Richard Stokes and Louisa Rogers were both nominated for an award. Although we didn't win on this occasion, the service was very proud to be nominated, and I'm sure we'd like to send our congratulations to them for getting as far as that was. The Excellence in Fire and Emergency Awards 2022 took place on the 9th of December, and again, both Louisa Rogers and Richard Stokes were both nominated, and I'm very pleased to announce that Richard won an award for the Most Influential Ethnic Minority Individual in Fire Award. So lots of congratulations, Richard. Thank you also to those who attended the Christmas Carol service on the 1st of December, and I'm going to ask Simon to come in and talk about an incident in Jersey.
Thank you, Chair. Members, I'm sure you'll be aware of the incident that took place in Jersey, where very sadly a building collapse took place with a three-storey block of flats. On Saturday morning, the service was contacted by National Resilience to see whether or not we had some resources to support our colleagues in the State of Jersey Fire and Rescue Service. We were able to mobilise some resources. We mobilised Rachel and the Urban Search and Rescue dog, Sally. We mobilised Rachel and the Urban Search and Rescue dog, Sally, along with Station Manager Paul Inkledon as the tactical advisor to support Fire and Rescue Service colleagues in Jersey, along with other colleagues from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. Rachel, Sally, the dog, and also Paul flew out by the Coast Guard on Saturday afternoon. They spent Saturday night and Sunday night and Monday night undertaking search and rescue activities alongside colleagues from Hampshire. Rachel and Sally the dog returned yesterday, and Paul at the moment is still in attendance in Jersey and will return tomorrow. So a tragic incident, I'm sure you'll all agree. Very difficult circumstances, but very proud of our staff that were able to go out there and support colleagues in the State of Jersey Fire and Rescue Service and the communities of Jersey as well. I just thought that it'd be helpful to give you an update. Of course, it's an ongoing incident, and resources from the State of Jersey is likely to be there for some considerable time. And it's an honour to be able to provide some resource to help our colleagues. So thank you.
Thank you. Can we please send our best wishes to them and thank them for all the support they've been providing? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I entirely agree with that. Very sad incident. I'm just wondering, I see there is an investigation going on within Jersey, and I'm wondering if they are subject to the same overall rules and regulations that we would be, for example, anything that we could learn straight away from how this has developed?
So obviously the state of Jersey has its own independent laws, but it will very much follow our own best practice from an industry perspective, because we're all trained to the same standard and same level. The state of Jersey Fire and Rescue Service is part of the National Fire Chiefs Council. In fact, I've met with the Chief of the State of Jersey Fire and Rescue Service a few times as well, and I'm sure that once the circumstances become known, he'd be more than happy to share any learning from that incident.
Thank you. Yes.
Can we also take this opportunity to, as a committee, thank to all of them, as you rightly said, and it should be minuted that we thank the efforts of everybody from our fire authority to who went there and supported, number one. And of course, number two, I entirely support that we should learn from the best practices and other things. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make sure that's captured. Thank you. On a more cheerful note, after this meeting, we'll be having some Christmas refreshments, and they'll be at the back of the room, so I hope you'll be able to stay and join us for those. That'll be good. Right, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Avon Fire Authority, which was held on the 5th of October 2022. This is going to be an automatic reflex by the end of the meeting, isn't it? It's just ridiculous. Right. So, I move that they're a correct record. Does anybody disagree? Ben, are you seconding? Right, thank you. So I'm going to agree and approve and sign them. Anyone against them? No.
Abstentions. All in favour?
Thank you.
Right, thank you. And the next item on the agenda is item 7.1, which is the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the People and Culture Committee held on the 9th of June 2022. And I believe, David, you're going to move them?
Yes, happy to propose them.
Shall
Are you going to second them? Yeah, okay. Any abstentions or disagreement? No. So can we accept those as a true record then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And the next one, Paul Goggin isn't here as yet, because that's the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Audit, Governance and Ethics Committee.
I'm happy to propose them, Chair.
Oh, there we are. There we go.
Right. This is going to take forever. I'm sorry. Okay. Is there anybody who was at that meeting?
So David Wilcox has proposed.
David, right.
Is there someone who can second, please, for us?
Anybody else who was there? Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
I think they've been already approved by People and Culture, these minutes, so I think we can
pass them through. Are there any abstentions or objections to Sorry. Hey, Chair. Sorry, I'm getting confused.
No, we're on audit.
Yes. Any objections or abstentions? No?
So we'll agree with those. Okay. That's the bottom of that one. Item 7.3. Oh, no, Richard's not here either, is he? Right. So this is the PRSC on the 15th of July. Were you at that meeting? Yeah. So.
Chair, can I propose we have a small break while we actually try and fix the intercoms, because this is going to get quite tiring otherwise.
Should we do this one? and then we can, I'm just not convinced we have the technical ability to fix it in the room, so we could end up being adjourned for quite a while. So I just think we just have to soldier on. Sorry. Otherwise it would have been a very sensible suggestion.
They went off at that point. Sorry. Okay, you'll have to bear with me. I'm sorry, I'm having to sort of ad-lib as we're going along. So if I get lost on the agenda, please shout, because it is a bit distracting. Okay, so this next one was the Performance Review and Scrutiny Committee, and was anybody...
Councillor Nutland.
Right, okay. Are you happy they're correct record?
Yes.
Anyone else who was there was
John
second?
Davis.
Yep, great, okay. And do you agree they're a correct record? No abstentions from anybody else or any disagreement? No? Okay, that's fine, thank you. Right. This is item 8. Yep. Okay, moving on to item 8 then.
So, Chair, I'm happy to take this paper. So,
Paper 8 is the
request from the Avon and Somerset Police and Crime Commissioner to join Avon Fire Authority. And the Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset, Mark Shelford, is in the room with us today. So my paper explains, it's on page 45 of your bundle, members, that the Police and Crime Commissioner wrote to the Chair of Avon Fire Authority on the 20th of May 2021, so May last year, seeking to join the Fire Authority. This matter was last considered
at your meeting on the 30th of June
21, and members decided to defer a decision at that point until their next meeting in October 2021, and invited the PCC to attend the meeting in order to explain his reasons for wanting to join the Fire Authority. I can confirm that we have invited the PCC to every meeting since last June, but sadly this has been the first meeting that he's been able to join us. So the recommendations in this paper are that you either
agree or refuse
the application of the PCC for Avon and Somerset to join the Avon Fire Authority, and if for any reason you should decide to refuse the application, you're required to give detailed reasons for your decision so that I may publish those on your behalf. If I just take you through some key aspects of the paper rather than repeat all of it. On page 46 of the bundle, the Policing and Crime Act 2017 introduced provisions to enable greater collaboration between the police and fire and rescue and ambulance services. And then the Combined Fire and Rescue Authorities Membership and Allowances Amendment Regulations, which trips off the tongue, doesn't it? They were passed in March 2020, and those allowed a fire authority to appoint a PCC to be a full member of the fire authority following a request received from the PCC. So it's basically those regulations which are being used. I remind you, members, that at your meeting in December 2020, you did approve the application for the previous Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset, which was Sue Mount-Stevens. Sadly, I think she only was able to attend for a couple of meetings before the end of her tenure. She decided not to stand for re-election in May 2021, and Mark Shelford was successful in being elected in May 2021. The invitation to join the fire authority is extended to a person, not a post, hence the application had to be remade. There are no financial implications because the membership of the fire authority would not attract an allowance, and all expenses would be paid for by the office of the PCC. On page 47 of the bundle, you will see that when I came into role, and this matter had been outstanding for a while, there were a few letters received from the Minister for State and Building Safety, Fire and Communities, which encouraged greater collaboration. And although we haven't been back to the Minister, I assume that is probably their position still today. I don't intend to expand any more on that paper, but I am going to invite Mark Shelford to present his request to you, and then members will have an opportunity for questions. Thank you.
Chair and Fire Chief, it's a joy to be back amongst colleagues and friends. It seems like only yesterday I was on the other side of the table. The simple reason of wanting to join the Fire Authority is to encourage collaboration at the strategic end of both services, from the police and the fire. There's so much that we can do together.
Not only do the actual... Thank you.
I can see this, like you, is going to be challenging. There's so much that goes on already in the ground between the two services when they are doing joint operations, which is fantastic, but there's more that we can do. I was part of the Fire Authority that encouraged the move of the headquarters from Templeback to the police headquarters in order to help gain that extra collaboration.
And I think
from a strategic perspective, there's more work to be done. And a couple of examples of this, I think. The police have learned much from your excellent officer, Annabelle, on the environmental work that she has done, and has led the Fire Authority in the way that you are one of the country's leading fire forces as far as the environmental work that you've done.
And the police
are, Avon and Somerset Police are having to catch up with you, and there's sharing between her office and the staff of the police force. Secondly, the point that the fire chief just made around Rachel and Sally, of course, we have a significant number of dogs, and there could be cross-learning and cross-training and support from the point of view of veterinary support, etc. Those are just two examples that roll off the tongue immediately. And so my request to you is to allow me to join. I won't attend every single meeting, but I will be there when you want me, and I will be there to help with collaboration. And I know from my own police chief, Sarah Crew, she is very keen to continue in the work. And I know, sadly, that the fire station at Cleveland Bridge in Bath wasn't successful, but that doesn't mean that other ones aren't. And I cite the example of Nailsea in Blackwell, police and fire, well, it's a fire station with police bolted on, is extremely successful, not only in the co-housing, but also in that work together when they deploy into the field. So that's it, Chair. Back to you.
Thank you. And I think we're open.
Any questions, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Just very quickly, the boundary of Avon and Somerset Police and the boundaries of the Avon Fire and Rescue Service, obviously, is it non-contiguous? Is that the correct terminology? So I'm just wondering, have you also applied to be part of the governance body for Somerset and Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue? Thank you.
Yes, I have, and I have not attended the first meeting until you make a decision, because I'm either all in or not. So I'm waiting for you to make a decision, and then I will attend. And they have invited me to attend at the same time, but I haven't attended one yet.
This is a question for officers. Just that, Mark was a member of the Fire Authority in the past, and there's the 8-year limitation on the Constitution. So given that Mark was a member in the past and I believe served 4 years, does that mean that this would be a time-limited appointment? I appreciate it would be time-limited for your period as PCC anyway, but is there a consideration there within the constitutional element of that?
My understanding, Councillor, is that the PCC would be joining in a different capacity as PCC, but I don't think, I'm trying to remind myself of the end of tenure date for you as PCC. When is that?
It's May 24.
It's an academic question, to be honest. Thank you.
Neil, that's my name. Sorry. Sorry. Thanks, Mark. Good to see you back here. You mentioned Bath Fire Station. We're rather disappointed, as you might imagine, that hasn't gone ahead in the way we'd envisaged. Is there anything you feel that you might be able to do to help that along, or have we got to plough our own furrow now, really?
So the short answer is no, there isn't, because I made the decision to withdraw from the joint work because it was going to take too long. The ambulance were not in a position to join in. We needed more space, and the answer from the planning perspective was to go to dig down to gain the space that both the fire service and the police needed on that site, and the cost implications of that and the risk implications to that, I made the decision on advice from officers to withdraw from that, which I let you know as soon as we made that decision. So I'm not going to support going together on that site, but on any other ones, I'd be very happy to look at that.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if there's a reciprocal arrangement that could be made. If you're going to sit on our board, is there a board that we can sit in within the police and crime structure, please?
The system is slightly different from the perspective that I am advised and supported by the police and crime panel, which has a different construct than the fire authority. Now, that panel is not mine to invite other people to, but if the chair chooses to write to the chair of the police and crime panel and ask if there could be one, that's not for me to say, and I certainly wouldn't object.
Councillor, I did ask this question last time, and the answer was no, because for that exact reason, it's a completely different construct. Okay.
Okay, I've got a question, Mark. You've been in post for, what, 18 months now? But this is the first time you've actually come along. Can I ask why?
Yes, you can. It's a very fair question. Every time that I have tried to attend, either you have moved a meeting, which meant that I couldn't then attend the new scheduled meeting, or I was ill with COVID and so wasn't available to attend. And the programme hasn't worked, and so my anticipation to support you is to attend 2 meetings a year. My anticipation to support you and Somerset and Devon is to attend 2 meetings a year for each.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it would have been good, I think, if you'd been able to attend previously, because people would have had an opportunity to maybe talk unofficially with you before this arose. So, any other questions?
Yeah, I need to ask you, Chair, and also the clerk, if you can answer the technical question that you put 6.1 about the risk you mentioned. Do we know when we're going to know that this government consultation publication?
So, in answer to your question, Councillor, we are all waiting for the government announcement. I was just asking Simon if he'd heard anything about the likely timescale, but we had a public consultation which closed, and I put in a collective response from members of the Fire Authority. I think I allude to the fact that that closed in July, so it's been some time now, so we were hoping to hear, and I think the Police and Crime Commissioner is equally waiting of that government announcement, so I'm afraid I don't know when that's going to be.
And I actually asked the policing minister the other day if he knew, and he didn't. So.
Any more questions or comments? Yes, carry on.
Amanda, do you happen to know the results of the vote last time round when Sue Mount-Stevens applied to be a member of the governance body? Just out of interest.
No, I know that it was the resolution was passed to invite her to join, but I don't hold a record of how many people voted or what the results were. Sorry.
Mark, I think Steve, you want.
Yeah, not to ask a question, Joe. So I think to me it makes perfect sense that we should accept Mark's or allow Mark to join, whatever the word is. So I was going to move that that's what we do, unless anyone has any other questions.
So can we... Sorry, did you want to ask another question?
Yeah, sorry. Would Mark have voting rights on the governance body? He would. Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's in the paper, so it's one vote. So you'd have your 20 elected members as usual, so that doesn't vary in any way. So it'd be just one additional vote from the PCC.
If I could just add, as part of the paper, which was extremely well written, I would be allowed to send a representative from my office, but they wouldn't have a vote, but they would then get the feedback, and they could ask questions should you agree it.
I have a feeling we had that situation when Sue couldn't come once. I'm not sure, but I think somebody came along, yeah, and sat in on it. Right.
So can we vote on the proposal so the proposal was that we allow the Police and Crime Commissioner to join Avon Fire Authority. So can we have any... Sorry, Councillor Gogging.
I was just wondering if Mark will be in the room when we vote.
I'm very happy to withdraw, if that would make it easier for you.
I think that might be helpful.
Amanda.
We'll send somebody out to find you.
Didn't we also say earlier that the order of voting would be against, abstain, or for? Yes. Yeah, okay.
I was coming to that. This conversation's a bit fraught. I've got 3 microphones on the go here, and I don't know which one's going to work. It looks like they're not working.
Just one technical matter. So when we vote, if the motion is successful, then does he become a member immediately, or does we have to write to him and invite him to come back again? Immediately. Fine, thank you.
That's certainly how it worked last time, and I've seen nothing in the Constitution which would suggest otherwise. In fact, we made, if you can recall, Councillor, last time we made some amendments to the Constitution to make it PCC accommodating, if I can put it that way. We added some additional provisions to the Constitution.
Sorry, just one question. Are we voting now on Mark as in his tenure, or are we voting that forever onwards?
No, just his tenure.
The vote is on the individual, not the post. So you're just voting on him for the remainder of his tenure. And I believe, because of the way the elections were, I think he's coming up for tenure a year earlier than he would otherwise be. So yes, it's just the remainder of his tenure. I think I did explain that in one of the paragraphs.
I think that's
yeah.
Mine's not working. I think that's why we're actually having to do this, Paul, because obviously Sue was a member, but then when she stood down, that changed it again. So presumably we'll have to do this every time. There's it. And the reason why the length of time would have been is actually going to be shorter was because of the pandemic, because if you remember, we all had our elections postponed by a whole year, and it's the same for us as councillors.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for my lateness. It's the ongoing situation that you're aware of, complications. Thank you.
Yes, there we are. Sorry, I'm pinching.
Yeah. Now, what happens if Mark again remains the PCC after May 24? Do we have to elect him again or not? Or suppose if a new PCC comes, then obviously yes. But in case he continues for another term and he wins the election in May 24, what happens then?
That's a very good question. I hadn't even thought of that possibility. Let me just see if I...
Surely we're voting on his tenure of his current position. We're not voting indefinitely, because he could be the PCC.
Well, I think we could record the decision in such a way that we deal with that. So we could say that we're inviting the present PCC for the duration of his tenure until May 24. Then we've made it clear. I think that's the way that we deal with that. Is that all right? Are people comfortable with that?
So I would need to
amend the resolution just to say put that date in as well. Okay. So can we take a vote then, please? So the vote is, are you happy for Mark Shelford, the PCC, until the end of his present tenure, May 24, to join Avon Thorough Authority as a member? Can we have any votes against first, please? 1. Okay. Any abstentions?
Sorry, hands up again. Can I just make sure I counted it? 1.
And votes for? 3. Yeah. So I think as vote 3 is against 1 against, then we have carried the motion. Thank you.
So his mandate's about as big as it is in Avon then, really, isn't it? Well, he didn't get voted in Avon, did he? He only got voted in by Somerset votes. So, from a political mandate point of view, he has none.
Don't you cause him trouble?
Just stated a fact.
Can someone invite Mark Shelford back here?
Yeah.
Chair, just sorry, has Mark indicated whether he's going to be staying at this meeting or is he going to...
He needs to leave, so
Okay.
we just need to give him the results of the vote,
Okay.
and then he's got another commitment. Thank you.
Welcome member. Thank you very much.
Mark, thank you for offering to leave the room. That's very helpful. Just to let you know that we have had votes in favour and that the motion has been passed. So thank you very much. So we will record the decision today that your tenure has been approved until the end of the current tenure, which is May 24. And then Emma will be inviting you to all future Fire Authority meetings. So thank you very much. I think you wanted to escape, didn't you? Yeah.
Just to say, to thank everybody, thank you very much indeed. It is a joy to be back, and I look forward to attending my first full meeting next time.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll also try to get the microphones working properly by then. It's a little challenging today. Right. Okay, next item on the agenda is perhaps slightly less controversial. I think it's Simon, over to you for the Revenue 2022-23 Budget Monitoring Report.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you have in front of you presenting a paper on behalf of the Treasurer and Head of Finance, who unfortunately are both unwell today to attend the meeting. The paper itself is for noting. It's a regular paper that you'll be familiar with in relation to revenue budget forecasting. You'll note from the paper, members, that we are predicting a small, modest overspend of £30,000 in this year's revenue budget, which actually, if you put that into comparison, in relation to increased costs that the authority have been exposed to in during this current financial year, that is relatively positive news. You'll also note in the paper on page 52 the areas where we have been able to offset some of the funding pressures in this financial year to ensure that we manage the budget effectively. 5.1, you'll see that there is an over... you'll see that there is an income received from the ambulance service resulted in a forecast over recovery of £300,000. Of course, we do have currently unresolved pay negotiations with some areas of our service and some condition of service employees, namely operational firefighters. So that remains unknown. But at this moment in time, you'll see from the paper that the forecast is for the current offer of 5%. For Greybook colleagues across the service. There's been a small underspend, £135,000 in the premises budget, mainly relating to savings, similar to transport costs, in that transport has reduced. Transportation expenses across the service has been reduced as a result of changing working practices, which has enabled the service and the Treasurer to be able to offset that against the other funding pressures year on year. A slight overspend in supplies and services as a result of increased supplies costs out in the industry. So in essence, members, that's the capture of the paper itself, which is a revenue support, and you're asked to note the paper. Thank you.
Any questions on the budget paper? Councillor Goggin?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I would just like to say I think a well done is in order, considering the current, situation with inflation, etc., etc. So, yeah, I'd just like to say that. Well done to everyone who's across the service who've, made economies.
Thanks. Just picking up on the point you raised about pay, I think the assumption in here at the moment is 5% for uniformed. I think obviously it's unresolved, but if it goes higher than that, what's the sensitivity? What does 1 percentage point do to the bottom line?
So any increase over and above. So when we set our budget last year, we set the budget to predict a 2%. So with the remaining 3% takes up to of the offer of 5% is unbudgeted at this moment. You can see we've managed to shuffle budgets around in year. For every further 1% pay offer, that's equates to just short of £300,000 on our revenue budget year on year for Greybook colleagues.
Thank you, sir. If we end up higher than 5, what is it? That's what I remember from last time. We have contingency in place in reserves to cover that, at least for the current year.
So it would be a requirement or necessitate us to have a look at reserves, absolutely, and any savings that we may need to make. However, since writing the paper, there has been released a publication of local government finance policy statement for 2 years, and it makes reference within that paper of options for the Fire Authority to consider when we set our budget in the meeting in February in relation to the precept, so setting the council tax. It gives a little bit more gives a few more options for the authority to consider over and above what we've previously had when setting the precept. But also it indicates within that paper as well that the revenue support grant is likely to be reflective of the inflation costs. But of course we won't have that confirmed until probably later part of next week, so just before Christmas normally. We normally get that notification and confirmation just before Christmas, and we'll bring that to the authority in our budget setting in February along with the Treasurer.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So just to clarify, because this is my understanding, the forecasted budget, which I know has not yet been voted on, so I understand that, but the figures we've seen is working on the basis of a potential 5% precept increase, isn't it? But that, these are my words, so if I've got it wrong, but that 5% increase on the precept is required to meet the increase in employee costs.
Crudely, is that right? If there's a 5% increase on the precept, then
There's a 5% increase on the precept. Most of that increase will be utilised to meet the increase of employee costs. Am I right in that? Or
So it's actually 2% or £5, not 5%, on a Band D property is the choice, whichever is the greater, and that's the decision for the authority to debate and decide on, rather than the 5%. The 5% is the pay offer to employees. However, that allows the authority the option with regards to a range of funding pressures that we have in the next 2 years. A lot relating to obviously our capital programme as well.
So can I just come back?
sorry, so my mistake. I thought it was 5%, not £5. So I appreciate we'll be voting now on February on the budget, but just because we're talking about budgets now, the £5, what does that equate to in percentage terms on the precept?
So from memory, I don't want to sort of give you a false figure. I can give you a financial figure, but I don't want to give you a false percentage figure. If I'm honest, Councillor, I can give you a financial figure on what that means to us, which is just short of if we were to opt for the £5 as opposed to the 2% increase, that would provide increased revenue of around 1.3 million to 1.4 million.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible to increase the £5 per household figure, or do we need to go to other means to do that?
Yep, so that will take us into referendum. So obviously the framework and the financial settlement gives you the option of either 2% or the £5, whichever's the greater. Anything greater than that would be go back into the referendum arena from there.
Yeah, the 5% increase or the £5, whichever. I mean, local parishes and town councils are keeping their precept increase to a minimum. A lot of them are trying to go under 2%. Here you're talking about £5 for a Band D property. And then possibly, if you go above 5%, that would increase the precept even more. That just would not be acceptable. Not to me, anyway.
Yeah, I accept that, Councillor. That is a matter for the Fire Authority to determine when we present the budget for next year in February.
Any final questions? The report is just for noting, so I believe we don't need to vote on that. So if you're happy for members to record that you've noted this report. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. The next item is item 10, the service plan overview and key assumptions, and I believe that's Scott and Natalie presenting that. Oh, sorry, I've missed. Yeah, 10. I've missed one. I'm sorry. It's dealing with these microphones is getting to me after a bit, not knowing whether I'm actually speaking or not.
Right, item 10. Service plan overview and key assumptions. I've got 10 minutes.
I think the script has got a different order to the agenda. I think that's what's happened. Okay, so let's go. Let's go with training, estate, and delivery options, as that is the next paper. So thank you.
We shan't forget this meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say myself and Simon are quite happy to let this go, and we'll come back another time. Yeah, so this, I'd just like to draw your attention to this paper that we've submitted concerning our future training state and delivery options. This is a reference to post-2028, when our private finance initiative arrangement comes to an end with regards to this facility here at Severn Park. There's some context in this with regards to just detailing how we provide our training and how we deliver it currently. So that focuses on delivery at home fire stations around the maintenance of continual professional development on station. It focuses on our enhanced training facilities at Hicks Gate, where we provide our internal training teams delivery of breathing apparatus training and compartment fire behaviour training, and also our urban search and rescue facility. It details the work we carry out at our Southwest Command and Development Centre, which is primarily focused on incident command training. Here at Severn Park, the Fire Service College, and then finally external training providers that we also use for specialist training. There's also some detail in here, reference some of the issues that we need to focus on for the next 10 years going forward. So primarily, as described in the paper, around Severn Park and what our options are going forward with reference to this facility, what the role of the firefighter looks like and how that might change our training provision and the additional training facilities we may require, what potential for funding looks like going forward into the future, some of our other estates and the conditions that Simon will provide you some further details on. New technology that might affect how we deliver our training going forward, but also how it might affect the service that we provide in the community, and then also what others' plans look like. So not just other fire and rescue services, but also other emergency services, and also some of the other providers that we use externally. So what I would like to do is just hand over to Simon for a brief précis some of this, and then we'll take any questions.
Thanks. I'll try and deliver this in short sentences, tying in with the microphone. So as Matt's described, we currently have a diverse training estate operating across a number of sites, including this, which is the main and biggest site for delivery of training. It's a complex area with specialist facilities that are required. And the kind of maintenance and running of those facilities is a significant cost, whether we have that in-house, whether it's at third-party sites, or whether we subcontract that in. This paper outlines some high-level options we've considered, and that's all kind of moved forward as a result of the PFI contract that provides this facility coming to an end in 2028. And the timescales are such that we need to make a decision about that now, because the time required to re-provide or do this in a different way will be significant. So we'll come back to the recommendation at the end of my kind of overview, but our recommendation is regarding the potential use of this facility for the long term and how we might do that, and we're looking to take that into a next stage of more detailed investigation and exploration. So I'll briefly cover off the background to a PFI, and then I'll talk about the options at very high level, then we'll move on to any questions that you might have. So this site was provided through a PFI contract back in 2001. That extended for 25 years. That includes the development and build and design of this site, and then the operation for a period of time. That delivered by an external party, Babcock Group, who run this site. This is currently shared with two of the fire and rescue services, Devon and Somerset, and Gloucestershire Fire and Rescue. And the split in terms of use is 50% Avon Fire, 25% Gloucester, and 25% Devon and Somerset. So for us, it's one of our kind of fundamental facilities. There's a legal section in the paper which I don't propose to talk to, but if you have any questions about that, I'm sure we'll be able to get through. But there are clearly plenty of considerations regarding the expiration of a PFI contract. We've sought some external advice to cover that off at this stage, but if you've got any questions about that, please ask shortly. Just move through here. In terms of the options we've looked at, So we've considered whether or not we could deliver our training needs across our existing estate, so that's excluding this site. And there are 1 or 2 sites with the potential space to develop, but overall our feeling is that there isn't enough scope, and that would require significant capital investment, which right now is perhaps not the direction we want to go, particularly in the short term. We already do collaborate with other blue light services. We pay a licence to use a site that is owned by the police at the moment, and we've looked at whether or not there could be further potential. We've talked to neighbouring fire and rescue services, most of whom are in a similar situation to ours. We've talked in a little bit of detail to South Wales, who have also got a PFI site, but they're not in a position where they could make a commitment or offer us any space or access to that for the long term. We've looked at outsourcing. We very much use outsourcing at the moment with the Fire Service College. There would be some capability of continuing to use or even expand that. But that would require taking our firefighters out of county and delivering training elsewhere, which would clearly be disruptive. And the cost of that is significant as well, and there would be no certainty over the long-term costs if that was our preferred route. We've considered the potential for a new site construction, so essentially re-providing something like this elsewhere. The costs of that are significant. Looking at what other services have done recently, we estimate it today's money, and that's likely to go up. That's in the region of 20 to 30 million pounds, which would be a huge consideration in terms of our capital programme and affordability. And then the option which we're recommending is looking at the potential to acquire this site and develop this as our long-term training facility. A number of you were at a member development session recently where we went into that in a little bit more detail and talked about how this site could be flexible and other functions could perhaps be considered here as well. I don't propose to go into any more detail about those options. We've outlined that in the paper, but clearly we can take some questions. What I will mention briefly is the financial implications. So at this stage, we've looked at the current costs of delivering training, including the contributions we make to this site. We've had sight of the running costs for this facility, so we've done some high-level analysis of that compared to the costs of running other sites as well, which we own. And again, I'll caveat that in today's money and today's prices, and things are moving so much at the moment in terms of cost, there's a modest potential saving that could be delivered by moving those functions and our training into one facility. So that's where we're looking at the moment, a modest saving of £500,000 annually on our costs to deliver training. I don't know if you had any more comments, Matt, but if not, I would you like me to go through the recommendation before questions?
Sure. So
the recommendation, I won't read it word for word, but it's that we agree to the Severn Park acquisition model as our preferred option going forward, and that we move that into a more detailed phase where we understand the more detailed implications and costs of that. At the same time, we will keep options open as a fallback, such as third-party delivery and outsourcing as well, because clearly at this stage we don't know whether or not this would be wholly successful, but this would be our preferred option. So, are there any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation, really interesting. Just regarding the Severn Park acquisition, you mentioned that there's a chance to offset the cost of maintaining this facility with estate rationalisation. So does that mean leaving the Portishead HQ, which would be quite an interesting proposition, as Mark just mentioned it, as an advantage of collaboration earlier?
I think continuing to explore the possibility of this building post the PFI contract gives us a range of options for consideration rather than focusing on one particular element of that. But I think the key thing is it does open up a world of possibilities for us to consider when the timing's right.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions. Speaking of the relocation of the HQ, which obviously would enable, the service to have a bespoke HQ rather than, if you like, squatting in the police headquarters. I was wondering when the contract or the lease on that comes up.
you're
not asking about the expiry of the PFI, you're asking about the expiry of the lease. Sorry, I don't have that date to hand.
Sorry, yeah, there are various clauses within that contract. I think the next break clause is 2025, but there are other subsequent break clauses as well.
Yeah, I mean, that would sort of fit in anyway. But yeah, okay. Sorry, have you had any feedback from the other fire rescue services in Somerset or Gloucester about what they want to do?
Yes, I have. I've written to both services and they've responded. Whereas Devon and Somerset have not indicated that they want to take part in any extension or any partnership arrangement beyond 2028. Gloucester Fire and Rescue Service have indicated that they remain options open at this time. However, they've been non-committal either way. May be interested in a collaborative type arrangement, but of course they're currently looking at. They're currently reviewing their own estates strategy and also their training facilities as well.
And are we contacting any other local services to see if they want to, come on board?
No, we haven't. We've just reached out to the partners that are currently involved in the current PFI.
Sorry, can I just make a brief correction? When I said 2025, I actually meant 2027. My arithmetic had gone slightly wrong.
Thank you very much. First, I just want to thank you for this paper. I think it was a very clear read on what's actually quite a complicated subject, so that really helps. Thank you. Couple of questions. First of all, on the financial table at 4.1, I appreciate these are very rough round numbers at this stage. Can you give some indication of kind of what the range of possibility is? If £500,000 bottom line is the midpoint, what's the kind of likely extremes?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to predict that because costs are changing. But I guess if we talk about today's money, and we've based this on costs that we're incurring right now, at the upper end, we're looking at 750. At the lower end, it's a little bit more difficult to predict, to be perfectly honest. And it would depend if we move into the area of potential estates rationalisation. That's a different beast. So we've sort of taken a midpoint in all of that.
Sure, thanks. And so I've got two more questions, if that's okay. In that table, there's £250,000 saving from insourcing training. Is that directly connected to the acquisition of this place, or is that something that could happen anyway under other options?
Given the right facilities and the space, it could happen under other options, but none of those other options include the ready-made space that we're looking at here.
Thank you. And sorry, last one. In terms of timing, I appreciate if we wanted to do something other than stay here, we'd need to start now. If we take this as our preferred option, will we get to a point of enough certainty quickly enough that if it turns out there's some good reason why we can't do this, we've still got time to look at other options?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. So in terms of the outsourcing options, they will kind of remain there in the background. We'll do some work in parallel with this to look at how we might be able to mobilise that if we need to. So I can't give you a kind of definite answer to that. It would be much more difficult to look at developing something like a new brownfield site. There's the potential we could develop aspects of our existing estate, but that would have to be really targeted and focused and wouldn't deliver the full range of facilities that we need.
Okay, so if we go with the recommendation today, essentially we're taking the new build option, the complete new build option off the table now.
Certainly within the timescales that we're talking about in this report. Yeah.
Not sure which of you two had your hands up first, so it might have been Shelley. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Right, hello. It's working. Yeah, Paul asked my first question, so that's all right. I was just going to ask, so do you feel fairly confident that option E, staying here, will meet training needs going forward for the fire authority? That's difficult to predict at this stage, maybe, but as far as you can see.
Absolutely. I think what this facility will provide is space and capacity and capability for us to provide the training facilities and training provision that we currently do, but it also provides us with plenty of scope to expand and develop various areas around this site should we need to, just to meet those changing needs of the fire service as it goes forward into the future. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Yes, happy with the direction of travel. Thank you. I just picked up on the ship firefighting paragraph. I'm just wondering whether there might be scope for other forms of transport to be brought in. We're very close to the Severn tunnel here, for example, and I know you have a good relationship with Network Rail. Maybe there's something that could be developed on behalf of other parts of the country, I don't know. But also
aircraft escape. You've mentioned the Fire Services Training College. It's been on nearly 8 years now, and I still haven't managed to get a trip to go and see that hint. But maybe you could make some comments on those issues.
Yes, so there's certainly the opportunities for us to look at how we use this site going forward. I think what's important is that there would be a blended approach to how we provide our training, because some facilities, so for example ship firefighting, we currently still use the Fire Service College because they've got excellent ship firefighting facilities, but there is a provision for us to provide the potential for us to provide limited ship firefighting capability for training, and also aircraft and anything else we consider. We also have a very good working relationship with Bristol Airport and the fire service that works up there and the training facilities they've got there. So I think there's still that opportunity to collaborate and work with others, particularly in this area for specialist training, and certainly we carry out a lot of training with Network Rail and the Severn Tunnel, and we're part of the contingency group that plan and operate training for large-scale incidents there already.
Thank you. When are we likely to know Bristol City Council's long-term intentions for this site? Because obviously that could have some bearing on this option as a viable alternative.
So we've had initial discussions with Bristol City Council, and the feedback to date is that this remains a long-term lease income priority for them. Now, obviously, we're not party to whether or not there are other discussions or thoughts around that, but so far that's been quite positive. There is also an option for an extended lease, which I believe could be transferred across to us, and we've had positive feedback on that as well.
So we need to pin them down, obviously, as soon as possible. So, yeah.
Councillor, I approached Bristol directly, and they very kindly sent back almost an immediate response saying that as far as they were concerned, they would consider assigning to us, and they would also consider an extension to the lease. It's very hard to get them to commit with so many years left on the PFI, but I think we've gone as far as we can at this stage, so I'm pretty confident we're good there.
Any other questions? Can't see any hands up.
Shall I just reread the recommendations? So the Fire Authority is asked to note the report and its recommendations, approve option E, Severn Park acquisition model, as the preferred option for the provision of operational training at the expiry of the current PFI contract in March 2028. If approved, request that the property manager and area manager of learning and development proceed to a more detailed phase of work to plan and implement this option, ensuring a timely transition of our training facilities to a new delivery model, and more fully assess the potential to move other key functions to a combined site, establishing detailed cost savings for the potential for further AF&RS estate rationalisation and consolidation of service functions in one location. And D, instruct the property manager and area manager of learning and development to provide assurance that the further development of our existing sites with the potential for expansion and additional outsourcing will remain under review in order to maintain operational training capability should we encounter any fundamental barriers in progressing the Severn Park option. Suffice to say, it's quite a wordy recommendation. Anyway, perhaps to save me reading all the sections out again, if we could vote on this as one collective vote, would that be acceptable to everyone? Any votes against? Sorry, did you have another question?
No, I'm just going to see if you need to propose it.
Okay, so thank you.
You going to propose?
Yeah.
Super. Second. Adam.
Any votes against? Any abstentions? Votes for? All in favour. Super, thank you.
I'm doing my confusing agenda, trying to get things in the right order this time. So it's not easy when you're the wrong way around. So I think I'm doing service plan overview, which I was trying to do previously, but, you know, it all fell apart. I think that's Scott and Natalie. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I'll do my best to keep the on-air light on throughout the report, and also to try and suppress the cough that we have going on in this corner. If I could ask members to kindly turn to page 85 of your pack. This report is coming to you today for consideration, and it's to update the Fire Authority on the key assumptions and findings identified by the Community Risk Management Planning Team and the Business Planning Team, which will inform our service plan for 2023 to 26. I wanted to start by mentioning that unfortunately our Community Risk Management Officer Natalie is unwell today as well. So you may recall that Natalie presented the community risk findings in this report during the members' briefing session last month. So if there are any community risk questions that either myself or senior officers here can't answer fully, I'll make a note of these and make sure we get back to you. As captured in the summary under paragraph 1.3, the current service plan was substantially renewed and consulted upon. Based on key findings and analysis to date, it is anticipated that relatively minor changes and updates to the service plan will be implemented in 2023 to 26. These changes will likely include updated narrative in relation to key challenges, community risk findings, updated performance metrics and financial information, as well as more recent service achievements. Section 4 of this report covers key considerations and findings identified to date. I'll just highlight the main points for now. We are seeing an increase in the number of incidents, with levels continuing to move towards pre-pandemic norms. Based on 2021 consensus data, or census data even, we can see an increase in the population of our service area, which is above the national average, as well as an ageing population. Lithium-ion batteries? Lithium-ion batteries is an emerging national risk, given their significant use, obviously, across devices and vehicles. Fires in tall buildings remain a key consideration in our service area, which has a high number of tall buildings, including commercial, residential and mixed-use properties. On heat waves and climate change, the unprecedented heat wave this year could indicate an increased likelihood for future extreme weather events. The changing economic climate and the impact of high inflation and rising interest rates have on the cost of living, and the impact that all these factors have on our community health and well-being. Other challenges and themes nationally include the war in Ukraine and the impact on financial markets and supply chains, living with COVID-19 and the prolonged impact of the pandemic, and the changing role of the fire service based on capability and capacity. In paragraph 4.9 of the report, we have also captured existing themes within Avon Fire Rescue Service, which have been identified and addressed in our current service plan and will continue to be considerations and priorities for our ongoing planning process. And finally, regarding next steps, a final draft of the service plan for 2023 to 26, with an accompanying consultation report following a 4-week consultation in January, will be submitted for review and approval by the Avon Fire Authority in March 2023. So thank you for listening. I kept it brief. I'd like to invite any questions you may have and pass back to the Chair for the recommendations in the report.
Thank you. Yeah. Regarding point 4.4, the fires in tall buildings, obviously, until recently, we thought all our high-rise in Bristol were clad with non-flammable cladding. We've now had this change. I don't know if it was a result of a fire incident or it's a national thing. Has that been taken into account? I mean, we're having to spend millions on fire wardens now, and we're going to have to replace all of the cladding, but it's going to take a decade probably. I just wondered if that's sort of factored into this.
So we factor in, the analysis is taken from incident data. So we'd factor in a number of incidents, severity of those incidents, and what we need to manage that risk. It's the management of the properties around high-rise that you're referring to is potentially, from our perspective, it's more around the risk of fire, less about and the occupancy level, less about the other aspects that you're having to deal with because of the responsibility. It's the responsibility of the landlord, in essence. And some of those other elements are managed through either prevention and protection, and we've increased our protection resource and capability and capacity, absolutely, to deal with that new and emerging risk. And it's all about balancing, the service plan is about balancing our resources available to match the risk profile. So there's if you like, a multifaceted approach how we deal with that risk, both from a response, but also from a prevention and protection perspective as well.
Thanks, Chief. And I don't know that you're dealing with Tom Renard, our cabinet member for housing. So thank you.
Can I just say the need to have the waking watch and the cladding removed was not that the cladding was identified nationally. It was very much locally after that first fire. So that's why, and obviously we can't take any chances when it's as dangerous as that.
And have other regions been informed by our, what we found out?
Yes, yeah, because it was a new issue. So yeah.
Thank
you. I appreciate it's not the responsibility of the authority to understand the makeup of the building, but just to identify the risks. So, using the example of a high rise. But certainly so I'm talking from my experience, within South Gloss, we were reassured that all buildings had been audited, for want of a better expression, to understand what the cladding was. And I would have thought Bristol would have done the same. So, without trying to point the finger at blame, just trying to understand how a building that must have been identified as a risk for both Bristol City Council and Avon Fire Brigade wasn't aware that it had, not quite sure the right phrase, but dangerous cladding. That just strikes me as a real concern. And the fault may lie with Bristol City Council, but I would just like to know.
So I guess the paper following on this around fires and other incidents would cover a little bit of this. There's some paragraphs within that paper which sets a little bit of context. Since tragic events of Grenfell, we focused on a particular type of external cladding, ACM cladding. So the audit purpose was done. Obviously, as we have learnt more around different cladding materials, they've become more into the foresight and the consideration of risk of fire spread, and as more and more audits are undertaken and inspections and more intrusive inspections of building materials, that's when these risks become identified, and then obviously from that perspective we put in those suitable arrangements, or we look at the risk assessments. It's not for us to recommend what the arrangements are in place, but for the building owner to present their risk assessment to how they manage that risk and whether or not, as an enforcing authority, we accept that proposal around that risk management. But it is very much an evolving environment with regards to building materials and what we're constantly learning, without talking about specific buildings, to not what compromise arrangements. That helps, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm interested in the timeline of events of when the Avon Fire and Rescue have acknowledged that expanded polystyrene cladding is a risk, please. You can inform me of that in writing if you like, Simon, because I'm a little more practical.
Yeah, certainly. So they become known when the building owner undertakes those audits and more intrusive audits. The audit process, it's a PASS 9980 is the standard, which has recently become into force as well. From a legislative authority's perspective, in terms of enforcing, obviously the Fire Safety Act has just come into force as well, so legislation is changing, which is increasing our powers of inspection, and also the parameters in which we would obviously enforce in relation to the safety of residents, safety of buildings. But happy to talk to you outside of this meeting on that subject, Councillor.
Thank you.
Nobody else? No? Okay.
So the recommendation is the fire authority is asked to note the emerging community risks and key findings identified to date in this report. And as these key findings inform the development of the service plan for 23 to 26, consider whether there are any further priorities or objectives for inclusion in the plan at this stage and prior to the draft being submitted for review and approval in March 23. So it's a two-pronged thing here. One is to note what is in the report, but also to suggest any other emerging themes or priorities which you think should be included in the service plan.
So can we take the first proposal? Can I see any against? Any abstentions? Are those for? It's unanimous.
Can I take it that there are no additional items that members want to highlight? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, according to my agenda, we should be on item 12, meeting dates. Good. I'm getting confused with the wrong one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is my paper called Fire Authority Meeting Dates for 23-24 and the Forward Plan for the remainder of this municipal year. So the way this works is I propose to you a set of meeting dates, which I can't take credit for because Emma's done all the hard work. So if you look on page 90 of your bundle, you will see a table, and it comprises all the proposed meeting dates for the Fire Authority on the top line, all the committees and member briefing dates. Can I just highlight two dates are pretty non-negotiable? So the AGM in June, we are required to hold that within a month of the Unitary Authority AGMs. So I don't really have much choice when that has to take place. And also the extraordinary Fire Authority meeting in February. The reason that's on a Friday at an unusual time, the 16th of February, is to give the precept figures to your unitary authorities in for their budgets. So again, we are very much told when that meeting needs to take place. In relation to the other meeting dates, as you can imagine, it's pretty hard to please everyone. In fact, it's impossible to please everyone, to deconflict with 4 unitary authority diaries and deconflict with officer availability. It's a bit like herding cats, trying to get dates that fit. Anyway, we've done our best. If there's anything which is absolutely awful, please let me know, but I will keep you posted if we need to change dates. once we've heard the Unitary Authority full diaries, once they've been released, then we will let you know. But I also appendix the forward plan. This sets out the last meetings of the current municipal year and which papers you can expect at those meetings. So unless you have any questions, that's my paper and dates which are proposed. Councillor Davies.
2 points. One is I hope that when we have more meetings here that it's easy to get onto the Wi-Fi, because I haven't managed to even find Severn Park 2, let alone get anything on. So I mean it's just completely useless, especially when you've got meetings we need to be looking at folders. So you just can't find it, Amanda. It doesn't exist. I've tried 2 different machines.
2 is the user ID. The Wi-Fi is called Severn Park.
Well, perhaps I'll explain it later, but it's just hard work, isn't it? I mean, just like getting in the place is hard work, getting on Wi-Fi is hard work, getting on the microphone's hard work.
This is supposed to be our place, you know, so...
The other point is, Amanda, about these meetings, or the February meetings, we are a local authority in our own right, and despite what the Treasurers might say at all the other 4, we shouldn't be bullied into doing things because they say we have to. We are a sovereign organisation, and we should decide our affairs to suit us and the people we represent as the residents of Avon through the fire. So it's us to decide our meetings, not for them
So I appreciate we need to
work together. But the bullying that went on last time, I think, is unacceptable. Telling us when we have to have meetings, which is purely for their convenience, not for ours.
Councillor, thank you for those comments. As you will remember, last year there was a lot of discussion and also a lot of movement of dates. And what I'm trying to avoid is that happen again. So the new date, which has been agreed by our existing treasurer, who's in post until the end of December, had been agreed with the financial officers at each of the UAs. So I'm not tempted to undo that work because I know a lot of meetings were held to get to that position. So I will discuss it with the new treasurer, the new statutory finance officer when they're in post, but I think for now I've set a date that we can all rely on as being good enough.
I mean, I've got no problem with that at all, and it just demonstrates the fact we are working together with the other authorities. If they happen to change their dates for their convenience, we then should stick with our own agreed dates and not be bullied by them for their own convenience, is the point I was rather making, because that's happened in the past several times.
Thank you. And your point about Wi-Fi, we normally have a technical man on site to help, and we haven't had these issues with this room before, so I apologise.
Can I make a comment about the Fire Authority meeting in March 2024? Because by that time, Bristol will be in pre-election run-up, so we might need to change that date.
I think that date is based on on the financial calendar, right. So I'll need to discuss that with our new finance lead, but I'll look at that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
We'll be having elections at the beginning of May, and I think that date would probably fall inside the 6 weeks or so. So, right.
Yeah, looking at the timetable, you've got a meeting scheduled for the 29th of March 23. I've got a feeling that might well be within the pre-election period for the May elections in 23. What date is the May elections? Bristol hasn't got them, so...
4th of May.
It's the 4th, did you say?
4th of May.
4th of May. So, in May, 5th of May 2022, the pre-election period started on Monday the 28th of March. So it might well fall inside, so we might have to move that, I'm afraid.
So we're identifying the column of March 24 as potentially an issue because of the proximity to the May election.
I'm looking at you on page 93 of the pack, where you've got the meeting scheduled for 29th of March 23.
Okay, so you're saying that the meeting date that's already been approved, so within the current municipal year, you're saying might need to be moved. I have a feeling that date...
29th of March.
Except for financial reasons, but again, I'll need to check. And I don't think PERDA necessarily means you can't make some of these decisions. I know there are restrictions, but I'll look into that. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Presumably, you'll let us know meeting times and meeting locations as soon as possible as well. Are we likely to have more and more meetings on this facility going forward?
So what we're trying to do, the only reasons we're using this facility and the headquarters a bit more than we used to is one, they had bigger rooms with bigger capacity for COVID, as you can appreciate. Two, it's cost effective because we pay for them already, so we're not having to pay for another, so it was a cost saving measure as well. We do like to try and get out across the whole unitary area. The issue that sometimes creates for Emma is not only you have to find a suitable venue for the numbers, available on the date you need, and that it's not exceptionally expensive, because I know we have looked at venues in Bristol, for example, that we had to discount due to expense. So we will continue to modify venues and we'll let you know. And yes, when you get your diary invite, it will have the timings and the venue. I do always repeat this plea to elected members that if you have a particular venue in mind yourselves that you think would be great for a meeting, please do let us know, because we have our little bank of venues we try, but they can't always accommodate us. So to let us know, we'd be grateful. Thank you.
And I think we're trying to avoid sitting in an open fire station in the winter, on the grounds of probably half the fire authority at least would be going down with hypothermia. So, Paul.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I don't know. You said venues in Bristol. Have you considered City Hall? And the conference, is it too expensive? Okay, that's fine. Regarding the dates, will they, and I'm presuming they will, be sent to us as invites once this is approved? Fab.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Any more questions, comments? Yeah.
Just to say that regarding the venues, can we also consider some of the universities? For example, University of Bath, Bath Spa, Bristol. I teach at University of Bath. We've got wonderful facilities, perhaps. And I can book for you, to be honest. Easy.
Special rate.
Yes. No rate. I can talk with the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, and I do organise some meetings in the university without any cost.
Okay. My microphones have totally stopped working now, so I'm going to stop shouting.
Thank you. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much for that kind offer. Yes, we will take you up on that, because I am very conscious we haven't been to Bath. So if you can find us a suitable venue in your university, that would be super. Thank you.
And without any cost.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yes, parking will be free as well.
That sounds even better.
I will buy from my pocket. Come on, go ahead.
With jam, Steve, as well, obviously.
Which my wife will make.
Okay, so the proposal is that we approve the proposed schedule of meetings for the municipal year 2023-24 and note the revised forward plan for the remainder of the 2022-23 municipal year. So I'm proposing that. Paul, are you seconding it? Thank you. Okay. Anyone against the proposal? No. Any? One abstention? All right. Can I see those in favour then, please? Should be unanimous. Yeah. Right, thank you.
Chair, can I just ask a quick question? Now that we've approved, now we've approved those, will those come out as diary invitations so that they're blocked off in our diaries ASAP? Thank you.
Proviso of checking those couple of dates with PERDA, but apart from that, yes, they should be.
I think the next paper is the immediate detriment paper, which is the highlight of the agenda.
Thank you, Clark. I'm not quite sure whether my voice is going to give out before the mic, or maybe they'll both give out together, but we'll give it a go. So, members, this is the paper on page 97 of your bundles. And it's coming to you today for a decision. I'll run through the paper first, as ever, and then go through the recommendations at the end. So, members, as you know, we've discussed immediate detriment a number of times, so you'll be aware of the background, context, and the issues. So I'll not focus on those substantively. I'll just give a little bit of information for members of the public who might be watching and haven't heard it before and don't know what immediate detriment is. So, as you know, the government intend to remedy the age discrimination which arose from the original method of transition of members from the 92 pension scheme to the 2015's pension scheme, and to do that in or by October 23. And I've not been advised of any change in the timescale for that. Okay, thanks. That remedy will be with back payments, and in the case of those who have retired, interest will also be applied, and the level of interest under consideration is included kind of in the paper. That may well increase, of course, with interest rates and inflation by the time they get there. But while waiting for that government remedy, there are a group of members who are financially impacted because they have already retired without their full 92 benefits, or are due to do so before October 23. And those are the groups that are termed immediate detriment. At your October meeting, you reconsidered the approach for immediate detriment staff coming up to retirement, so those who have not yet retired, and you decided to pause immediate detriment processing for them due to the potential financial implications on local budgets. And you'll remember it is local budgets because the Home Office removed the provision to and the funding for some aspects of ID processing before the government remedy. And primarily they did that in respect to the tax implications for both scheme members and managers. However, you did agree to a case-by-case consideration in certain circumstances. So this paper asks you to consider the approach for impacted staff who have already retired. So therefore, you've decided your approach for forthcoming. This is the other aspect, which is those who have already retired. And in respect of that matter, some key points to just draw your attention to in the paper. So there are 36 impacted people who have retired without ID currently applied. There's a potential processing method to process those under ID, and that's the LGA and the FBU framework, which is in your appendix. However, as that framework also recognises, to do so has potentially significant cost implications for the authority. And while the figures in this paper are heavily caveated for the reasons set out in section 4, using the LGA Ready Reckoner, the potential costs are estimated at $323,000. We've looked at potential funding for that and consider the potential funding could be the pension reserve. But taking the $323,000 out of the pension reserve and considering the need to set aside the $230,000 for ill health retirements, that would leave little resilience for other pension matters or increase in these cost estimates or additional admin costs due to the complexity of these cases. Conversely, there remain the risks that if you don't agree any form of immediate detriment processing for retirees, there is a potential legal claim risk, and which is potentially increasing, and as we know, is costly. There's also the potential risk of a different approach for forthcoming retirees and for those who have already retired. As I always say when I talk about immediate detriment, this remains an important matter for impacted staff, and while retirees made the decision to retire based on pension estimates without immediate detriment applied, since then, of course, we've had the cost of living crisis, which means family incomes are more stretched, and potentially their feelings then of injustice about needing to wait for this to be resolved in 2023 increases. Also to point out on the framework, that due to the pension and demands which would be put on our pension administrator, if the framework is agreed, we would not be able to meet the prescribed timescales within that, but of course we would do best endeavours. Therefore, as ever, members, this remains a finely balanced decision, and it's a member decision as the scheme manager. If you are not ready to adopt the framework yet for existing retirees, then my recommendation is to apply the same case-by-case provision as has been agreed for forthcoming retirees. And I've set out in paragraph 5.5 of my report how that is currently working and operating. That approach, I would believe, will help us potentially manage the expectations of the pension ombudsman, which are cited in the paper in paragraph 7.4. And it also, for example, allows consideration of hardship cases. So, therefore, returning to the recommendations, I can read those ones out. It's to note the current position with the FBU and the LGA framework, to continue to consider the potential implications and costs of adopting the framework for those in the ID category who have already retired, to continue to defer a decision on adopting that framework pending any changes, legislative or otherwise, which would reduce the financial impact on local budgets, and to agree that, in the interim, representations from impacted individuals who have already retired without ID applied can be made to and determined by the Chief Fire Officer and myself as your Director of Corporate Services. Thank you, and as ever, happy to take any questions.
Councillor Davis, I think, put his hand up first.
Well, I was just going to say, from the sage advice you've had in the past, and you, Angie, and the legal experts as well that are assisting you, I'd like to propose that we accept your recommendation. If I'll find a seconder for that. So, I'll leave for us to debate.
Any questions?
Thank you. Yeah, can you give us a sense of how much this group of, was it 36 current retirees are potentially out of pocket? I know it's difficult to calculate, but I think it was 36 of them and the figure of 300 and something thousand total. Does that mean it's roughly 10 grand each, or am I being too simplistic?
Thank you. I have included that in previous papers, but an anticipation for today, when I've looked at it before, for an average firefighter, the difference is around £2,000 a year on the annual pension and around £15,000 in terms of the lump sum. But that is, of course, an average firefighter, and there'll be people within this group who are at different ranks, etc. And it depends on other complexities, like how much you commute, etc., etc. But that's the ballpark that I've included in previous reports.
Thank you. And I may be completely off the mark here, but is there an option whereby we could, we know who those people are, we can identify where they are. Is there an option to make a partial payment, a down payment of, I don't know, take the ready reckoner and make it 50% or 70% or something, that would help to alleviate some of the hardship and the ill will without exposing too much risk?
Yeah, at the moment, the framework is our only provision to do that, and it's specified in the framework that you can't partially adopt it. So there is a problem with that. I know that the LGA and the FBU continue to be in discussion about the framework and what adaptations may be possible to make it slightly less difficult for fire authorities to say yes to it because of the financial considerations around that. But as yet, the framework is the only mechanism for that, and we can't partially adopt it.
Fair enough. So if someone makes an individual application to the two of you and you agree it, is it then use the ready reckoner all or nothing?
I think because we are then using a kind of particular discretion and consideration around it, that there may be more options for both of us to consider, and particularly in hardship kind of cases.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you'd heard anything back from the Home Office about, updating the guidelines, which would obviously be helpful. And if we've written to Suella Braverman,
An easy mistake.
Yeah, and I hear she responds very quickly on her personal email.
I think I best only respond to the first of those ones, Councillor Gorgon. That is the latest kind of situation. I spoke to the LGA only this week in preparation for this, and those discussions are ongoing, and there's not yet a time frame for them.
Thank you. Nothing correlative that is taking objection to that comment.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you. Of the 36 people affected, are we in sort of discussions with them? Do you know how they're feeling about this situation? Are some of them tempted to go down a kind of legal route, or are they sort of more inclined to wait until the Home Office have got their act together? Do we know anything about the feelings of the people involved?
So we do keep in contact both with our forthcoming retirees and post-retirees. After every one of our discussions, I write out to them with the information from this, and also we have an internal pension advisor who they can also contact. I think my sense is that it varies across that group. I think some are content to wait until there is an outcome, because in some ways it provides more certainty for them, because otherwise they don't need to keep recalculated all the time. And also there is the matter of interest. So of course, people taking it now will then have 10 months less interest than if they waited for October 23. But within that group, there are also people who feel a strong sense of injustice around needing to wait until October. And also people who are experiencing financial hardship or have particular plans, who would like the option for case-by-case consideration. So I think, that it's different across those groups.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments?
So you had a proposal from Don, which I think was seconded by Ben, which is to propose that you accept these recommendations. So do you want to take any votes against? Any abstentions? All in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for that, Angie. Right, I think we're on to item 14, service roundup. And who's doing that? Steve. Yes, Steve, right.
Okay, members, again, this is a standing agenda item, as you're more than familiar with now. The report is for noting, and I just would like to draw your attention to an error on page 132, which has been pointed out. Section 5.3 should read Mr. Howard Evans, not Councillor Evans in North Somerset. So if you just note that.
Ordinarily, questions are invited.
Questions are invited. With the agenda that goes out, we haven't received any questions in relation to this report, so just picking out a few of the highlights that would be worth noting for members. Building on the previous discussion earlier, section 5.1 in relation to the high-rise incidents that happened between October and November in Bristol. Just to update members that our ongoing BFS or business fire safety and community fire safety
engagement with communities and Bristol City
Council continues. We've done 20 visits, joint visits so far, and there's another further 10 planned up until the end of the year. So it's not just the incident is over, that community engagement carries on up until the end of the year currently. I normally provide focus on community activity in general in this paper, certainly with the vulnerable adults team and the children and young people's team. I'm not going to do that on this occasion. What I would like to do is draw members' attention to section
5.10.
It's in relation to our truck wrapping. In that period, we had a focus on Black History Month, with one of our trucks being wrapped in Bedminster. Currently, we've now got 2 trucks wrapped for Black History Month, and also part of our truck wrapping engagement scheduling, we've also got 2 trucks wrapped with denoting our support for Pride in the LGBTQ community. And part of our ongoing truck wrapping also includes activities such as on-call recruitment, blood and organ donor campaigns, awareness, and also our own home fire safety visit activities as well. So there's a wider programme in place of truck wrapping to continue our engagement and representation within the community and support for various community groups. Another area that I'd like to draw members' attention to is on page 134, section 517 onwards. We had a number of teams represent the service within a National Festival of Rescue this year, and we had some notable successes. We had first place in the Helm Water Rescue Challenge. We had second place in the USAR Challenge, and also third place in the HGV Extrication Challenge. So, building on the awards that were referenced by the chair earlier, operationally the service had put teams into the event with some significant noticeable success. Also, that this year, for the first time ever, we had our technical rescue rope team enter, and they gained sixth place. The interesting thing, I think, for members' awareness is, although the service does support the activity, the teams that do go up to represent the service as much as we can, it is primarily a voluntary thing. It's through the sort of pride, professionalism of our staff that they want to invest their own time and effort to go up and represent the service and bring back that expertise into our normal day-to-day training. So again, worth noting. And finally, after 2.5 years of hard work and endeavour going through COVID and the like, the fire station just down the road is complete now, thanks to the hard work of Simon and his team, as well as obviously the main contractor. And for members' awareness, there'll be an opening ceremony in the new year, around 6th of February, and invites will be shared, again, just in the turn of a new year for members to come along. And as I said, the report is for noting, so any questions, Chair?
Thank you. Can I say that right. Can I say that the wrap trucks look really good? Yeah, it's quite interesting to see that. So yeah, thank you. Right. Yeah, Councillor Batters first, I think.
On for the minute. Yes, congratulations on the successes. That's very good news. We're all no doubt devastated by the recent tragic accident with the pond, and I'm wondering if there's anything that we should be thinking about there for the sake of the local communities in our area.
Yes, I'd agree, Councillor. I think winter safety campaigns is part of our ongoing campaigns across all social media that we do communicate this time of year. Unfortunately, as has been acknowledged within the press, these tragic events do sometimes occur, despite all the efforts that multiple agencies go to try and educate awareness around such risks. So.
Thanks, yeah, and given the cost of living crisis, I know a lot of people are turning to alternative forms of heating, be it, opening up fires, which, the chimneys may or may not be clear. I've even heard one of my friends has got a Calagas heater now, which I thought had completely disappeared. So, yeah, I mean, obviously you're factoring that in your winter safety campaign.
It is exactly that, Councillor Goggin, yeah, that's factored into the winter campaign.
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate and thank for the brilliant work over the 2 months, October and November 2022. I'm particularly delighted to see many good works being done by the Fire Authority, and also celebrating the Black History Month, which is really, really satisfying. So just wanted to say that in the minute, if this could be also noted, that on behalf of the team, we congratulate. Thank you.
You will make sure that does get minuted. It's great.
As the report is just for noting, are members happy just to note this report? Yes, thank you.
I think we're on item 15 now, which is date of the next meeting, Wednesday the 17th of February 2023 at 10:30 at Severn Park. Right. Sorry? Yeah. Well, oh, it says Wednesday on here. I don't know.
It's one of these peculiar dates because of the budget diary. So, yes. It's not a Wednesday, it is a Friday.
You remind me of the time, because I had it down as 2 o'clock. You've got 10:30.
Item 16 is the exclusion of the press and public. To resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following items of business on the grounds that they contain exempt information pursuant to Schedule 12A, Part 1 of the Local Government Act 1972, and that in accordance with Schedule 12A, Part 2, Paragraph 10 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So can I have a seconder to that, please? Thank you, Shelley. And can I see votes in favour? Right, thank you. That's unanimous. So can we stop videoing the meeting, please?